we will get acquainted with the Greek perspective of the problem, but also with other impressions from the UK or from Sweden. We have scheduled 4 presentations together, and it's my privilege this morning to replace Pia Dahl Højgaard from Denmark, who had to leave yesterday already. So first of all, the rapporteur of this session is Mr. Peter Laraka from the Netherlands, who I guess is well known to everybody. And so I would like to introduce the first of our speakers, this Miss Julie Berry, who's from Her Majesty's Land Registry for England and Wales, and she's head of the International Department, and she is going to review the last WPLA workshop that was held in London recently. Julie, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Peter, for your kind introduction. As Peter said, I'm the head of the International Unit at Land Registry. I'm also a member of the WPLA Bureau and a board member of the European Land Information Service. I would like to present to you this morning the findings of the recently held WPLA Bureau workshop that was held in London in October 2012. Before I do, I'd like to just give you some contextual facts and figures about Her Majesty's Land Registry, just so that you understand the nature and the volume of the business. HM Land Registry is responsible for the land registry records for England and Wales. We were founded in 1862, so it's our 150th year of existence. And we operate as a standalone title registry. We operate under common law as opposed to civil law. All areas of England and Wales are now compulsory, and they have been compulsory registrable since 1990. And we have about 24 million registered titles on our register, which equates to around 80% of the land mass. For most of our existence, for most of those 150 years, we operated as a central government department that received its finance by vote of Parliament. But in 1990, we were awarded trading fund status, which effectively means that we can operate as a business. We are allowed to maintain any surplus that we acquire during the year through our fees, and use them for reinvestment. We do make a return to Her Majesty's Treasury, 6% of our income, but anything over and above that we are allowed to keep in our reserves. And that actually has been a very useful funding model for the Land Registry over the last 20 years, as it has enabled us to invest in new services and products for our customers. Our turnover is currently around 290 million GB pounds sterling per annum. That's down from around 440 million pounds a few years ago. Obviously the property crisis in the global economy affected UK quite dramatically. At one point we were receiving around about 30% of our normal volume of applications. We've now stabilised at around 60% of the 2008 volume, so we receive about 5,000 applications per day. Most of the information service requests we receive are online. Over 90% of requests for information from the Land Registry come through our website, and they're obviously processed automatically. We currently receive about 5,000 substantive applications a day, and of those 5,000 applications to change the register, we would expect to process around 66% of those on the day we receive them. So that's just a little bit of background to Her Majesty's Land Registry. We wanted to host a conference for the UNECE for a number of reasons. As I mentioned, the property crisis did have an effect on the land registry, and we were forced to focus our efforts internally to stabilise our business. That meant our international work was very much put to the back of our priority list. Now that we have stabilised the business, as I've said, we felt it was important to signify our capability, to showcase the UK and demonstrate what a great place it is to work and to do business. Of course, 2012 for the UK was such a significant year because of the Olympics and because of the Diamond Jubilee of Her Majesty the Queen. So there were lots of good reasons why 2012 was a great year for us, and we thought it was important to try to secure the honour of hosting a conference for the WPLA, and it was a great privilege to be able to say that I actually organised that conference on the behalf of the Land Registry. So that's the overview, that's the context for why we held the conference. We wanted to use all of that experience, some of it not very nice experience, to say, yes, the UK had a property crash, the Land Registry was suffered quite dramatically as a result of that. So what did we learn from the whole, the traumatic, if you like, experiences that we went through when our very existence, because we are a self-financing trading fund, was in jeopardy. As with all of the UNECE WPLA events, it was aimed at people like yourselves, the land administration experts from around the UNECE region, members of the UNECE community, and invited guests of Her Majesty's Land Registry. It was free to attend, but delegates were required to pay for their own travel and accommodation costs. And we did secure some sponsorship. I have to mention our sponsors, Thomson Reuters, very active in the land administration market over recent years particularly, and so we thought the partnership with Thomson Reuters was extremely appropriate and actually very welcome. You can see the facts and figures about the attendees on the screen. I won't go through them. There were 34 countries, lots and lots of different types of people attended the conference, not just registration people, surveyors, lenders, academics, people from the UN, the World Bank. So a great range of attendees, about 134 delegates in total. It's held in central London. It was a 4-day programme. I think our website is still live, so if you'd like to see any of the presentations that were shown there, they are available through the Land Registry's website. Session 1, as you can see, had some very important and dignitaries. Benara Roll from the UNECE chaired the session. Axel Frelfall, who was an anchorman for Thomson Reuters News, previously worked for CNBC, was the facilitator and interviewed some of the panel members. We had our own Chief Land Registrar, Martin Dawson OBE, and we had Desmond Hudson, who's the Chief Executive of the Law Society for England and Wales. As you know, we don't have a notarial system in the UK. Solicitors are the ones who undertake legal work on behalf of their clients. There are around 130,000 solicitors in the UK, and Des Hudson is the Chief Exec of the Society, which represents their interests. We also had Paul Broadhead, who is a policy advisor at the Building Societies Association. He represents a large number of smaller lenders in the UK. We did think long and hard about whether to have such a UK focus, but we are still an active property market. Our stock exchange is one of the most busy and active in the world, and London is a well-known banking and financial centre, so we thought we could share the learnings and the practices from a UK perspective with the global audience quite legitimately for those reasons. We also had two advisors to the UNECE, Steve Williams, who was a past president of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, and also Brian Emmett, who was a long-standing banker with Barclays, so again, global perspective. They've both been working for a report to the Real Estate Advisory Group that supports the work of the UNECE Committee on Housing, Land Management, and also the Working Party on Land Administration. I won't read out the entire feedback from the sessions, but I would like to draw your attention to the things that I think will become recurring themes as we go through. Paul Broadhead's main point is that the lenders in the UK, Europe, our region, they rely on the land registry for accurate and authoritative information, which is backed by a state guarantee if possible, which is very much the case in the UK and in the UNECE region wider. So they want information from a trusted source. That's very important to the lenders. They also want the confidence of knowing that that information has been gathered under a statutory and a legal framework. That gives the lenders confidence in knowing that the security of their money is safe and that they are willing to take a risk when someone applies to borrow money from them. Malcolm Dawson's perspective was obviously slightly different. He described the land registry's journey through to a current way we do business, with a focus on our particular electronic services. We are currently in the midst of a very long programme to make all of our services available online. We are currently just about to launch, well, we have just launched an electronic document registration service, but all of our information services are online. So Malcolm's talk was about how we have progressed towards e-registration, how we want to go further to assist with electronic conveyancing in England and Wales. But he feels, based on our experiences, that transparency is particularly important, but it's not the role of government to mandate a solution. That has to be very much tailored to the culture, the legal framework, the operating nature of the country which is seeking to automate its processes. So particularly here, what we're seeing as a theme already emerging is standardisation of information from a land registry which is seen as a trusted source and also backed by authoritative and held by authoritative bodies such as the land registry. And the information, they feel, must be easy to understand and easy to obtain. Steve Williams picked up on the theme of transparency, as you can see here. He said that in his view, particularly in the years since the crash of 2008, that maybe if there had been greater transparency in the real estate market, we would not have seen the breadth and the severity of the property crash that we are all still facing. His view was that the lack of transparency was an obstacle and still is an obstacle to lending to encourage recovery in the market. He also picked up on the theme of technology. Technology brings transparency, brings efficiency of process, it brings automation and standard ways of dealing, all of which Steve Williams' view, as past president of the RICS, which does place great store on global standards because they have their red book. Obviously, standardisation and standard methods of transactions are very important to surveyors. Brian came at the crisis from a slightly different view because of his background as a banker. But again, he picked up on this theme of lack of transparency, and also he re-emphasised the point that the lenders view the land registration authorities as the source for information. They then referred to a piece of work, to a piece of research that they've done for the Real Estate Advisory Group. There is, I understand, a report that's been prepared for them to consider what steps could be taken going forward. Ghanara conference about our study, which was conducted by the UNECE in 2009 on Ford and land registration authorities. I have a copy here, just so you can see what it looks like. It is available on the UNECE website. Okay, so the conclusions of session 1 were that political will and sound legal framework was are prerequisites for building confidence among lenders. Transparency of land and property information is equally important and should include as a minimum property value, transaction information, such as who are the owners, also the rights, the burdens, the limitations and the responsibilities of the owners of that land. The session concluded that new technology is absolutely vital. IT and mapping solutions will improve transparency, help to reduce costs internally and deliver benefits to customers. There are still cultural barriers. For example, this was highlighted in the fraud study. The way that different land authorities make information available to their citizens varies from country to country. In UK, for example, England, Wales and Scotland, Northern Ireland, we pretty much make everything available to anyone who asks. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, there would be land registration authorities who have a closed register. And there's a myriad of different form of permutations in between those two extremes. So that needs to be recognised and it needs to be part of the land administration regime. It is important that development of capacity through training and education and sharing best practice is a feature of the land administration market, and that was the theme very much picked up on by the UNECE, which is very active in providing experts to go out and advise countries who are still going through transition. Session 2 of the London workshop focused on data and how that can be used to stimulate growth. We had our chairman, Mark Boyle, who chaired that session. It was facilitated by Michael Milligan that you met yesterday. Ben Elder is the Global Valuations Director at the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. We had Ralph Locke, who's the head of property at the Olympic Delivery Authority. Dr. Diego Navarra is a geospatial expert, and he's a professor at Ceristi in Sicily. And of course, we had Dr. Chrissy Potsu, who I think gave the start performance. Okay, Ben concentrated on the need for standard valuation and also on the problems that surveyors have because of the number of different sources they can go to for access to information. And they really made a clarion call for the land registry or the cadastral authority to take a lead in being a source of authoritative data for chartered surveyors. He believes that there is a multiplier effect on economic growth. And I cite an example. In the land registry in England and Wales, we release very basic information off the land register, such as transaction volumes, property price, title numbers, which are the generic reference that we have. Very high level information. We release those free, but they are then used by private sector companies, other government departments. They're overlaid with data they already hold, and the value to the economy grows and grows commensurately. So we give away information for nothing, and there is an industry that is generated off the back of that information. So I think that was Ben's point, that it generates wealth through the back of meshing data. Ralph Locke described the role of the land registry in England and Wales in supporting the Olympic success story, if you like. That the area where the Olympic Stadium and all of the other supporting stadiums were built used to be heavily polluted, it was derelict, it was a blighted part of our capital city. And the process that he went through and his legal team went through was very much reliant on partnership with experts from the land registry. And actually somebody from the land registry realised from the applications that they were receiving that something was happening in that part of London very early on because of the types of information that the ODA were asking for. So somebody in the land registry phoned up Ralph Luck's legal team and said, something looks like it's happening, what is it? And they said, we're building an Olympic stadium. So that was the start of a partnership between the public and the private sector, which really brought about development and economic growth in a very, very impoverished parts of London. And of course, if you did go to the Olympics or you were in London in 2012, there was a brand new, huge shopping development that was built off the back of lenders being prepared to invest in a very, very poor part of London, and that relied on the decision that that relied on the information on the land register. Thank you. Diego actually wanted to talk about, in future, how we can develop sustainable cities with the use of land registry information that can be overlaid with other climate data to produce and manage climate change. Chrissy talked about informal development in Greece. We heard yesterday about the problems that there are in Greece, and so I don't intend to go through this slide in any great detail. Okay, so the conclusions of session 2. Data can help stimulate economic growth in a number of ways, and it's really down to all authorities like the land registry to collect and hold the data. I think we heard yesterday about the solutions which are available to land registration authorities, what technology is out there to support mapping, collection of data, transactional services. Jackie Bennett was from CML. She was of very much of the same view as Paul Broadhead had been the day before. She's keen to see the land registry introduce more electronic services and to keep them within standard formats. Wim Laumann talked about the Quebeco 2 project, which has been recently approved by the EU, and he spoke about the work that had been done in Quebeco 1 between the Netherlands and Spain. Again, I won't go through this slide in any great detail because we heard yesterday about the work that's been done by Rosriester in Russia. Malcolm Childers was describing that work to the audience. Peter Rabley, land administration expert, now with Thomson Reuters, talked about the situation in the United States. Obviously, it's extremely large, very difficult to manage the land effectively. Each state has its own land registration system. Some register deeds, others have electronic conveyancing. So there's a myriad of problems that the United States have in transacting effectively. And Peter described the work that's being done there at the moment to try and harmonise the process across states. Rick Wouters talked about, is managing director of ULIS, European Land Information Service, and he talked about the work that's being done by ULIS. Okay, so very briefly, session 3 talked how technology is harnessing efficiency and how it's helping to solve problems. In session 4, there was quite a lot of vision. How do we stay relevant as land registration authorities in the future? Lots of speculation, lots of blue sky thinking. Warren Gordon presented a view as a commercial lawyer in London, an expert advisor to the Law Society in England and Wales. He made a plea to the land registry for things that he would like us to do. Pierre Dahl-Hogard talked about the vision document that's been recently signed by the Eurogeographics organisation with the PCC, ELRA and ULIS, and how that will help all of those organisations to work more effectively. We spoke about being relevant to our citizens and changing the data that we hold to be more relevant. And we had a very interesting couple of presentations from Frank Tieroff from the Cadastre in the Netherlands, talked about electronic conveyancing, and John Meadows as well, who's a past colleague of mine, now working as a land consultant in Australia, And he talked about, again, the legal certainty to facilitate investment and transparency. So these common themes keep recurring. The conclusions of session 4 really wrap the conclusions up of the whole conference. Standardisation, online services, transparency, and being relevant, staying relevant, being prepared to gather more data, to stay relevant to the citizens of your country as they change the way they live, whether they translate from home ownership, which is what we're seeing, to rental. So we need to be relevant, and that really was the overall theme, that we need to evolve to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, for this wrap-up of a real big conference. And my question to the audience would be, are there immediate reactions or questions that we should take right now? I cannot see this at the moment, so I'll leave it to the rapporteur then, later on. I would then like to give the floor to our next speaker, which is Mr. Roger Ekman. He is a senior advisor to the Swedish Lantmäteriet, and he's talking about the need for efficient registration procedures. Roger, please.
Thank you very much, Peter. And thank you, Chrissy, for being so kind to invite me to express an opinion at this workshop. We have heard very much about hard facts and data, and I'm afraid I will not be able to present that much of data, but I have an opinion, and I would like to share it with you and maybe have reactions on it. We all know about the importance to have a system that handles the registers over ownership and tenure, and that's well known. It's documented in many different contexts, and we know that this is the fundament of the market economy. If we do not have a secured ownership, we are not willing to invest in our property, and we will not have economic growth. And we also know that secured ownership to land is a necessity, that land could serve as collateral for credits. And in these ways, it is the fundament of the market economy to have an order of who owns what. Very well known. But I would like to focus on that the question is not just to have or have not. There is something in between. You can have a more or less efficient land administration service. And I believe that having a more or less efficient service concerning land administration will have more or less impact on the economy, but the interesting question for me is where in the economy of a country does these effects occur? But I'm very convinced that even if we in Sweden have a rather well-working system today, if we could improve it more, it would be beneficial for the economy in Sweden. So where do we find the effects? And I think we could find, I have myself just came up with that we should find the effects in the property market, of course. And we have discussed that these days quite a lot. I wonder if it has an effect on the enterprise as a general, on the general macroeconomy in the country. And I think so, of course. These are leading questions, everyone. And of course, this will have impacts on the public finances in the country. I would like to try to make estimations of these impacts in numbers. I will come to them. When it comes to the property market, Sweden is a small country, 9 million inhabitants, deep frozen with polar bears on the streets, on top of Europe, you know. We still have a value of transactions each year of 22 billion euros. 22 billion euros. That's quite a high number for us. We know that if we have a well-working land administration, if we could register changes in ownership fast, we will have a lower interest expenses. If it will take a long time, you have to take worse credits during the time when you haven't had your ownership registered, because the bank wants to have a risk margin when they borrow your money. There is a very interesting court process starting in Denmark now, where landowners are suing the state because they have introduced an electronic land registry system that delayed the registration of ownership with 4 weeks during a period of 9 months, and they claim that that has costed the landowners something like 500 million Danish crowns. It's a 40 million euros, something like that. So now they assume the state, and in this court process we will find out if their claim is okay. Having a slower working property market will also mean that you, as an actor on the market, will miss opportunities. You would like to act when the circumstances are the correct. Now is the time to buy or sell, but if this is delayed, you will miss opportunities, and that probably would make you less interesting to act on the market, because you know it's of no use. So you will have a slower working property market, and this, I would think, will have impact on the next number. That is really a huge number. Look at that. You have to count the zeros, but that is the value of the market value of real property in Sweden, the land in Sweden. Sweden is for sale for 1 trillion euros. And it's a really huge number. And what I claim is, if you look at an enterprise, whatever, a small shop, a workshop, an industry, a farm, or whatever, they would like to adjust their business to changing conditions in the market, with an increasing market or increasing demand, decreasing demand. They would like to expand or increase their business. And if they can do so fast and efficiently, we will be using that value in an efficient way. If it is hard for them to adjust their business and the property use to the shifting demands in the market, the land will be less efficient used. And that number is so huge that even a small percentage of that value is still a very huge number. You can compare it, the land value with the volume of the GNP, and you can see it's about the double. You can put in the volume, the value of all the stockholding companies in Sweden, and if you add that to the GNP, you maybe are up to the value of the land. But the land is a so very valuable asset of the country. So using this asset in the most efficient way is of immense value for the country. Of course,